Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today we have a great episode. I'm really excited about it. Mike Capuzzi with Bite Size Books. He helps entrepreneurs and business owners write what he calls shooks, a short, helpful book that allows you to create credibility, allows you to help people solve problems, help your customer base solve real problems. And he does it in a way that makes it easy for you, the author, you, the expert, to create this book. And he helps you get it out there. He helps you figure out a way to use it so that it helps people. It's a really, we had a great, kindred spirits is really who we are, because we didn't know each other prior to this episode. So I'm interested in this. I've been researching the idea of writing a short book. He's a cigar guy. He's a bourbon guy. And he's got a daughter in college like I do. So it hits all the things. And he's doing something for our listeners. So it'll be in the show notes here. But if you go to his website, mikecapuzzi.com/magic, and you'll be able to click the link. He's got a free gift for everybody that is listening to this and will just go to the website and say that you heard it on the podcast, and he'll get you this gift. Well worth it. So go grab a cocktail, go grab a cigar, strap in for another great episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So, Mike, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to jump on the Sales and Cigars podcast. I think we got some fun stuff to talk about here. So thank you.
Walter, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this.
We always, behind the scenes, kind of like green room, kind of. I always have a little chat with the guests beforehand, and we're not going to have a problem talking about anything.
I don't think so.
Because your business is something that I happen to be interested in for something that I'm looking at doing. So I'm excited to learn. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what this podcast is about. Have some fun for me to learn, and maybe we share some smart ideas for the guests. So let's start with like bite-sized book, right? Books. Why a book? Why is that something that entrepreneurs should be considering and contemplating?
Well, I mean, my first answer, Walter, would be the fact that for over 100 years, as a matter of fact, I'm a marketing geek, so I've gone back as far as the late 1800s, where business owners, marketers have used a printed book as a marketing device. So, books have proven to be a time-tested marketing media. Even in this day and age where Kindle books and audiobooks are starting to, ramp up, regardless, a book is an important device. People are used to paying for books. There's libraries still. There's obviously Amazon.com. There's still bookstores. So unlike a lot of sales collateral where it's given away and people sort of like don't put a lot of value on it, people will value a book. Most people will not throw away a book that you've given them. They may give it to somebody else. They may put it up on the shelf until they really need it. But by their very nature, Walter, books are items of perceived value, and therefore the person whose name appears on it, the author, has a high level of authority, a little bit more influence than the average person. So there's no doubt, Walter, that books are not going away anytime soon. We happen to publish a certain type of book, which we can talk about. But yeah, they're a very powerful marketing device and sales device.
Yeah, it's sales device. So I've read a couple of books a month. I listen to what I'm dumb, right? I'll buy an audio book, and then it's like, I should just read this, and then I buy the book as well, and not always, but more often than not. So I have both, and it allows me to listen to a book while I'm walking. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's going to publish, and we'll get into like a shorter book and a reason for a book, but that idea for me to listen to a book while I'm walking or exercising, and then coming back to it and then highlighting and using little note cards or Post-it notes is sort of my thing. To me, I 100% agree. it's perceived value. It's something tangible. And who would throw a book away, right?
All right.
I mean, I have books that I have since I was a kid because I just can't throw them away. Um, that's a real thing. So, um, and I, since I read a lot, I read sales books, and I thought about like writing a book, but about sales, and it just seems like every book I read, there's a lot of like, oh, that's the same as what Gerber said, that's the same as what Kurland said, and Weinberg said that. So there's a lot of that, and there's not that there's anything wrong with it because we're rehashing ideas, but the idea of a shorter book that speaks to a very specific topic that addresses a particular problem, right? Am I on track there with why we write a shorter book?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, Walter, I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know how many of those books you're actually finishing. I know as I've gotten older, and I'm a pretty big reader, a voracious reader, I find it very hard often to finish that 200 or 300 page traditional book. I get, distracted, I get bored, whatever. So by their very nature, the kind of books that we help sales leaders, entrepreneurs, corporate leaders publish, they are about a 1 hour read for the average person. So it's about a 1 hour conversation in book format. Therefore, it allows the person to read it and not feel guilty they didn't read it. So I always say you can jump on a plane in New York City, and by the time you land in Detroit or Chicago, you're done. So that's powerful. They've read it, they've hopefully grasped the message, and then they take the next step, and we can talk about that. So it's good for the reader, and it's great for you, the author, because instead of writing, I just was speaking to somebody on my podcast a couple hours ago, so I have a podcast too. It took her 8 years to write her first book.
Oh,
8 years.
and
And
that's what people are afraid of, right? That's one of the big fears.
yeah, for sure. For sure. So our format, it takes about 8 to 12 weeks if you do everything I instruct, but it's a heck of a lot shorter, Walter. It's a heck of a lot faster, and it's a heck of a lot more effective because our books follow a very specific, proven marketing and sales formula that I've developed over the last 15 years.
Okay. All right. So the idea of a shorter book, I mean, there's some really powerful ideas that you just went through, right? That somebody they won't feel guilty about not reading the book. That's a real thing. I never
It
thought
is.
of it like that
Yeah.
before. That you bought a book and it's like, holy crap, that's like 300 pages, and it's a little pedantic the way it was written, and it makes it harder to understand. Um, is part of your process helping somebody write at a grade level that most people will feel comfortable reading and grasp and understand?
Yes. So before I answer that question, let me just take one step back. And we were saying you feel guilty about not reading a book. Well, conversely, when they read a 100-page book, 1 hour book, I'm showing it there on the screen, therefore they feel a sense of accomplishment, right? And hopefully the book motivates them to then take that next step with you, the author. Now, to answer your specific question, yes, I try to coach our clients, because every client that we work with works personally with me, I don't necessarily say dumb it down or talk at a fourth grade level, which we know is a lot, often the target way most of us have to communicate so that everybody gets it. I always say, let's just talk, write the way you talk. The kind of books that we publish, Walter, they're not going to be a New York Times bestseller. They're not going to be the next Shakespearean novel. That's not what this is. It is a sales. What's that?
We're not Chaucer. We're not.
No. Maybe it could be. We haven't had that yet. But by the way, I just happened to do a quick tally on one of my shooks this morning, which is now still 2 years after I published it. As of today, it just popped up back as a #1 Amazon bestseller. And we've sold over 6,000 copies of that one book. That means 6,000 people. That doesn't even include the Kindle Unlimited version, but 6,000 people have, at least read something about Mike Capuzzi. And I know I've inspired a ton of people to write their own shooks. But I always say, write like you talk. This is not about literary perfection. If you are, able to have a good sales conversation, which most salespeople can do, then you can write a shook. So I say, write like the way you talk. I say, encourage people to strive for personality and not perfection. You want this to be a 1 hour conversation. You and I are having a 30-minute conversation or a 20-minute conversation today, but imagine a 1 hour conversation, me to you, And that's how I coach my clients.
And the books are what you call shooks, which I love that little hook. They're about a particular topic where you get um, enough information for somebody to learn
Yeah.
what they should learn on that topic to be able to execute on some strategy or take some sort of action, depending upon the
Yeah.
topic.
Great question. So whereas let's say the average business book is about 100,000 words, roughly 200 to 300 pages. A shook is about 10 to 15,000 words and about 100 to 120 pages. One of my shooks I wrote, it's actually behind me, is the 100-page book. And I talk about the power of a 100-page book. So it's not meant to be before I even go there, the other thing I was going to say is I always encourage people, rather than write one 300-page book, which may encompass too much for the reader, write 3 100-page books and break it and slice and dice it so that maybe 1 or 2 of those shooks is what appeals to the reader, and he doesn't have to read the third one necessarily. So they're self-identifying with what they're looking for. Again, the power is in keeping it focused and not trying to teach everything you know. Yes, you have to add value. Shook stands for short, helpful book, not just a short book, a helpful book. It has to be helpful, Walter, but it can't, nor should it teach everything, because that's where you want to then lead the reader. If you're interested in what I'm saying here, schedule a call with me, schedule a session, whatever it might be. And that's where you now can begin the relationship, where then you can really, do everything that you need to do to help them.
Right. And then you can add other value on other topics and other pieces.
Yeah.
So it's an 8 to 12 week process. They work directly with you with your program. Are they, how do I say this? They should have an idea. They should have a slant. I mean, how prepared do they need to be?
Yeah, well, I guess when someone's thinking about it, just like even you and I were talking earlier, it's, first of all, you see the value in being a book author, right? You see the value of a book-centric marketing and sales strategy where you're using the book as a way for lead generation, for getting podcast gigs, whatever it might be. So that's the first sort of criteria. The second is you help people. Whatever you do, you're helping them, and you have a proven record. So, that's always important. And then the third thing is you might not have super clarity on yet what the book is yet, Walter. And that's where, for example, if you and I were working together, you and I would be masterminding and we would be figuring out what's the right angle. We would come up with what I call the special sauce of what it is you do, and we will craft a book around that that's unique to you, and that speaks your language and, does what it should do for you and for your readers.
Awesome. Okay. So it's so that you don't have to have it fully developed. You don't even have to have a full concept or an outline or anything. It's like I want to do this. I see value. I have a certain amount of expertise, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Necessary.
Yes.
But then you want to be able to go from there. So let me ask you a dumb question. I have a 20-year-old daughter. Right. And she's a junior in college, but she has a desire to do something after she graduates, after she makes a little bit of money. Right. She's an equestrian and she wants to have a specific type of barn where they do young horses in rehab, to develop those horses to get them back out on the under saddle. Mm-hmm. So when is it too early to start to be thinking about her building credibility? I know it's a little wild off the beaten path.
Actually, it's not. It's so give me a sign if I'm going too long. Can I share a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I have 2 daughters. One's a junior, one's a senior, going in their junior and senior year of college. So roughly the same age, 20 and 21. My oldest daughter, 4 years ago, right at this very moment in time, right around July 4th in 2018, she was going into her senior year of high school. And we were sitting out by our pool that 4th of July weekend, talking about what she was going to do for the summer. She was going into her senior year. She started thinking about college, yada, yada, yada. I challenged her to publish a book. And we had just rescued our first dog. So not a horse, but a dog. And we had just rescued our first dog. So we came up with the idea of a book about dog rescue, people who've rescued dogs. So the book, and I have it right here. If I had known I was going to talk about it, I'd bring a copy. It's called Dog Joy. And we did it as a compilation book. So my daughter, again, going into her senior year of high school, only had to write one chapter. 25 other rescue dog owners wrote a chapter. So we now have a book of 26 chapters with 26 dog owners, each sharing the importance of dog rescue.
Their story and why they did it and how they did it.
And they profiled the dog. But here's the cool thing, Walter. Every dollar that we raised went to the 26 charity dog rescues featured in the book. She raised, as a high school senior, almost $6,000 from this book. She got into the front page of two of our local newspapers. We still have local newspapers. She was featured in a 30 under 30 article in a Philadelphia area magazine. When it came time to apply for college, and this is not why she did the book, we weren't thinking this far ahead. She got scholarships from many of the schools she applied to because she used her book as a way to differentiate herself in her essays she had to submit.
It's a beautiful. The whole process of getting into school is different than what it was when I went to school.
And it was she had one of the universities, the dean of the college that she was applying to, wrote her a handwritten letter saying we would love to have an author in our freshman class.
Wow.
So it was, as a matter of fact, she could have done so much more with it. I still challenge her because it could have really blown up for her. But she was, 17 years old.
Yeah, But it's the big lesson there is Dad ain't so dumb, right? He's got some ideas to make.
Maybe in 20 years she'll really realize what, and it's still something she uses. She uses it on job interviews. Anyway, to your point of your daughter, I mean, that's maybe not the right kind of book for her. It could be. It's an easy way to pull together a book, but I don't think it's ever too young, Walter, to be thinking this way. Being a book author is something that no one can take away from you. And most people still put a lot of value when you call yourself an author.
Okay, that's good to know, because I think it's something that it struck me when we were talking that it's something that would help her get to where she wants to go. If for no other reason than just the exercise of thinking about writing the book and the things that would go into what she wants to accomplish. Because she's actually, as a 20-year-old, what she knows about horses and what she knows about, their behavior, their psychology, their anatomy, every time I'm at the barn and we go to visit her and she's there, she's doing something with the horse. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, oh, he likes this, right? Because it stretches out his legs. I'm like, how do you know he likes it? He's not stopping me from doing it, and he could make me not do anything, right? Because he's kind of a big animal. So I think she has some knowledge there. So that's something else that I'm going to have to approach her on to start thinking about, because that will help her get jobs and opportunity and within that world, because that's equestrian. They're like dog people, but they piss away more money.
Well, if she ever does that book, Walter, let's stay in contact. I know a very famous, fairly famous guy in the business world. Do you know Dan Kennedy?
Yeah.
Okay, I know Dan.
I got 2 of his books behind me.
All right. So I know Dan. I know Dan fairly well. Matter of fact, he wrote about my daughter's book, Dog Joy, and he gave $1,000 to that cause. He wrote a check for $1,000 for that cause. Matter of fact, I'm looking over my wall. He made a big thing about it, and I put it up on my wall when he wrote about her book. But Dan's a big horse guy. He's he's not racing anymore, but he did the
he did the
what are they called? The little 2-wheeled things.
Yeah.
I want to say chariot, but
it's not a chariot.
Anyway, he would probably love to write. You might get him to write the forward. That you get someone to quasi famous. But anyway, I digress.
Well, all right. So the kid can write a book. I can write a book. You've got a process. This is all, and reaching out to you. I'll have all this stuff in the show notes. But what's the best way to reach Mike? Is it in LinkedIn, email, what website?
Yeah, well, actually, is it okay to give your listeners a gift and you?
Sure.
It's not a cigar. It's not a bottle of bourbon. I'd like it to be. So I have written 3 shooks. I'm showing them on the screen as if everyone can see them. The Magic of Short Books,
Mm-hmm.
the Magic of Shooks, and the Magic of Free Books, which tells you how to use a book, a shook, after you write it. Like, it gives you 51 ways to use it. You can get them on Amazon, but I'm going to give your listeners the ability to read all of them online for free. It's a hidden link. But if they go to MikeCapuzzi.com, so just my name, MikeCapuzzi.com/magic, as in it's my magic kit,
Mm-hmm.
you can just name an email, let me know you heard me on Walter's podcast, and I will send you a link or 3 links to read each of those books. And Walter, they are. I don't hold anything back. I tell you exactly what to do and how to do it. And then
But
for those who
those books cover the big questions that I wanted to ask you, right? Why,
absolutely,
how, and then what? Now what? Right?
yeah,
And
exactly
that's what
right.
they all cover.
Yes,
So that I really appreciate you sharing a gift. That's for everybody. I'll make sure that that's in our show notes so that people can get there. And I again thank you. So let's pivot, if you don't mind.
uh,
Um, we're both, as we can see from the little license plate you have behind your left shoulder, we're both cigar guys. Um, and I also learned that you're a bourbon guy. Um, so let's talk a little. Let's talk a little cigar. What's your relationship with cigars? How often do you partake, and why and when?
yeah. My relationship started when I was probably doing smoking Swisher Sweets in high school, in college, playing poker, and like going to the local convenience store and getting these nasty little cigars. But I always, I never did it for any sort of nicotine or anything. I just enjoyed the taste. And as I got older, I mean, I'm a geek. So when I get into something, I'm a geek about it. So I have one of those refrigerator doors or refrigerator, they wine doors. So I've got 300 cigars downstairs in my office, all kinds of cigars. I have journals, Walter, that I have kept for over 20 years with the little, you put the label on it and you write what you did. I mean, before
Tasting
my
journal?
kids, what's that?
A tasting journal?
Yeah, I mean, before my kids were born, back in the mid 19 early 1990s is when I started those journals. I have them right over here. Um, you know, but I'm not. And the other cool thing is, I live in an area in Pennsylvania where Cigars International is about a 90-minute drive for me. So it's like, have you ever been to Cigars International?
I have no, almost.
Okay,
I was
okay.
ready for one of their little summer activity events, and something happened family wise. I couldn't make it, but
Well, their flagship store is it's about an hour and a half from me, and it's like Walt Disney World for guys like you and me. No, seriously, it is a destination place. It's beautiful. It's post and beam, and there's bars and food, and oh my god, it's a destination. But my buddy and I just go there just to go up, buy a cigar, and sit outside on their deck, and it's just fun. So that's kind of cool. I think that's a really cool thing to do. But I would say, for me, I'm not a big like, oh, I got to be hanging out with the guys and smoking cigars. I love smoking on my deck right over here, and it's a way for me to contemplate and come up with ideas. Some of the best ideas I've ever come up with in my business have been over a cigar, maybe a drink, but definitely over a cigar, just sitting out there. I calm down, my brain, the creativity juices start flowing. I love it. I just love it.
so I have a name for that cigar, right? That and it comes from my friend Doug Price, who was a mentor. It's called a contemplative cigar, right?
Exactly.
Where you're just going to sit there. Like my office is a cigar lounge, and I have 2 big leather chairs off to the side, and a whole, big screen surround sound and bar and all
Nice.
that.
Nice.
So I can go sit in that chair by myself, um, and have like a little journal with me
Yep.
that you know is ready to go. It's always with me, and I just think about flesh out an idea, solve a problem. The worst thing that happens is that the page is not really full and it's not the problem didn't get solved, but I enjoyed a cigar. Right?
Yeah.
That's the worst of it. I rarely have a cocktail by myself. I have a few little every once in a while. I'll take a little snort of something just because it's been a rough week or I celebrate something. But most of the time, that contemplative cigar
Oh,
is just something that helps me do exactly what you were talking about, right? Get through
yeah.
creative, problem solve. And I would say a lot of my, not that I have a lot of great ideas, but a lot of the ideas that I get come from that time spent with a cigar. So let me ask you this: if you've been keeping journals for 20 years, over 20 years, and you have, I mean, I have a big humidor. It's got 25 boxes in it.
Wow.
So I make sure that I don't run out of cigars in case something
Apparently not.
happens. I have cigars that I brand for my business and I give out. Go back like your Swisher Sweets, but what was your first like real hand roll? Like your
I can tell you.
I know
I can
you
tell
could.
you.
Without asking, I knew you could.
Well,
Do it.
and it's actually really memorable. So, how long have you been smoking cigars? Measured in decades?
1993.
Oh, okay, so like that's when the boom started, right?
As my wife said, I developed two bad habits in the same summer.
Yeah, so that's right when the cigar boom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, cigars and golf. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's when the cigar boom really started. So I had been smoking cigars prior to that, but that's when Cigar Aficionado came out, right? I think it was 93, maybe. No, I think it was December 92 and then 93. And for years and years and years, I had boxes and boxes of those. I finally sold all my back issues, which I probably shouldn't have. But anywho, there was a cigar back in, so this was even before I was married. There was a cigar brand that really grew. It was made here in the States, down in Miami. You're going to know who it was. It was La Gloria Cubana, Ernesto. I think it was Ernesto.
Ernesto Carrillo?
Yeah, yep. And cigars, and I think that was like this first cigar of the year. Anyway, that Cigar Aficionado blew that cigar up. The Wavell, which was the Robusto size. Mm-hmm. Anyway, again, I had been smoking prior to that, but my local cigar shop that I frequented was able to get them in, marked them up accordingly. But I can remember my wife, well, she at the time I was dating her, or maybe she was my fiance at that point. For my birthday, I think it was my 30th birthday, she bought me a box of those. She bought them through this local merchant. And I just remember it was very hard to get because, they were so popular. They were good cigars too.
They were.
But I just, for whatever reason, whenever I see La Gloria Cubana, the little red label, it literally brings me back to it is all 30 years ago now.
We're getting
crazy.
Old, Mike. We're getting
old. We are. I had cigars when my daughters were born. I've got cigars when different things have happened. Yeah.
Do you have a cigar? I call them tractor cigars, where like I have a little bit of property. So one of the things I'll still go out, get on the tractor to cut the grass. Because to me, it's like mind candy.
Yes. Contemplative tractor. Right. Yeah. Cutting grass.
All I have to do is not run into the tree or take down the flower thing.
Run over a rock or something. Right.
Yeah. And I have like a couple of cigars that are not, I'm not going to name them because they're sort of like, they're a decent cigar. I get them from our friends at Cigar International. But it's like, all right, if the branch hits my face and I lose the cigar, I'm not going to jump off and try to save it. Right. So I have a couple of cigars like that. But do you have a go-to that if you're going to go out on the deck and it's
well, that's funny. I used to have a tractor. We moved a couple years ago. So I had a tractor, I had property, and I would do the same exact thing. So Walter, we're kindred spirits here. I don't anymore. Now I'm kind of fat and lazy and someone cuts my grass. But, so I get just to watch from my deck, but,
smoking a cigar.
Yeah, I didn't have any particular brand. A lot of times I would, I would get all the magazines, all the catalogs. They might run a special, and you're probably buying something that's not great, but I can't pass up a deal or something like that. So, but yeah, I still probably have a lot of them in my humidor. Some of, and they're probably aged 20, 25 years, but there's definitely some. A lot of cigars came and went during those boom years that were pretty quality. And yeah, I'm sure some of those probably would have been Tractor cigars. And by the way, another real quick story I got to share. So when my wife and I did get married in '96, we went. Part of our honeymoon was in the Caribbean, and I'm not going to share any details, but we were in the Caribbean. Things were a little different in the Caribbean, and this guy that had the local store that was, my wife bought. He had us on the lookout for cigars from another country that's down in the Caribbean that are hard to get. And I remember coming home with a couple boxes of those cigars, and it was a very interesting experience. But we made it home. I'll leave it. Enough said there.
Well, back then that wasn't cool, but now you can bring back.
Yeah,
I think you can bring back 2 boxes if you.
If I don't even know what it is now. I haven't traveled.
As long as you went there legally, you can bring them back legally, but just for personal consumption. I was going to Florida for a month, and I had a big travel humidor where I brought, 30 cigars just to kind of get me through a couple of weeks, and going through TSA, and the TSA guy's like, I need you. Which bag is yours? And he had my humidor, right? It went through the little thing, just cigars in there. And he's like, is there anything in there? And I'm like, you just looked at it through the thing. It's cigars. He goes, well, what kind? The kind you smoke. Open it up, right? Because he was like being cagey.
Uh-huh.
So he's lifting them up and had those styrofoam trays, right? And he's or foam trays, and he's pulling them, looking at them. He's just looking at them. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, well, I'm just, kind of seeing what kind of cigars you smoke. And I'm like, are you trying to see if they're Cuban cigars or if they're, legal cigars? No, I'm just curious.
Oh, so he just wanted to know.
And I'm like, you're holding me up to get to where I need to go so you could see if you approve of my cigars. And he's like, yeah, that kind of. I'm like, do you approve? And he goes, well, I really like these 2 trays, but this one over here, I'm not so sure. I'm like, all right, are you looking for a cigar? Would you like me to give you a cigar? He goes, oh, no, I couldn't accept one of those.
Really?
I'd get in trouble. I'm like, well, here, take one then.
Yeah.
Right? And I
confiscate one.
There's the camera, and he's like, oh, no. But I mean, it wasn't. He was literally curious.
That's interesting.
He was a cigar guy, but he was like, why do you have so many cigars? I'm like, if you have to ask, you're not going to understand.
Right.
I just thought that was somebody that had a little more power than they probably should have, because he wasn't looking. I was leaving Detroit to go to Tampa, and it was, I was going the wrong way to be bringing back content. Although I suppose I could have went to Windsor and picked up some. But,
yes. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right. So you got, we kind of are kindred spirits, and we'll land on this bourbon. You've got a couple bottles laying around. You got a few cigars laying around. So let's just say you grab a nice Padron 1964 anniversary, right? Do you worry about pairing up? Do your journals talk about pairing cigars?
Yeah, sometimes. I'm not. Yeah, sometimes. I've gone to a lot of cigar dinners, and they do the pairings. And again, I enjoy it. I enjoy eating. I enjoy it all, right? But yeah, it really depends on just whatever. I'm sure it's like yourself.
Thing, right?
It's a mood thing. As I was going to say, it's a mood thing. What am I in the mood for? Maybe I love bourbon. I love tequila. I was just in Mexico. Our first family vacation in a couple of years, and I really got hooked on mezcal. I had never had mezcal, and we were at a very high end resort, and they were giving us all kinds of hot. First thing I did when I got home was buy one of the bottles of mezcal. So it's just whatever my mood is.
Did they do the thing with the dried bugs?
What do you mean, in the mezcal or just as eating?
Well, there's a distillery that's here in Detroit that serves bourbon, and they make their own tequilas, and it's pretty high end stuff. And then they had like this. We did this thing with mezcal, and then they brought out these little bowls of dried bugs.
Yes. So the answer is yes. We had dried crickets so we were at a resort, an all-inclusive resort, which was very nice. And one of the night, and so they had different kinds of restaurants there. One of them was a Mexican restaurant. The Mexican restaurant, and I'll try anything. Like I'm game for anything. So we had a really nice dinner. My younger daughter's game for anything. So we were eating dried crickets. It was an appetizer, and it tasted like little potato chips. There was nothing wrong. But so to answer your question, yes, we've had the dried crickets.
Well, we had made friends with this bartender, and that's what these look like little dried bugs, more like a worm. And yeah. I'm like, what do you want me to do with those? And he's like, you eat them. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, it's if you try it with the mezcal, it'll be more palatable. So we tried. It was a bunch of nitwits like me, a bunch of my friends. So we took a few of them and tried them. And your description is pretty much dead nuts on. It was a weird tasting.
Yeah, I mean they fry them. There's nothing left. It's not like it's raw, and plus it's probably a lot less calories than peanuts, so maybe a little healthier.
Well, it's all protein. It's not kosher, but it's all protein.
That's true.
So Mike, this was I was excited about the conversation. I think we covered business, we covered shooks, we covered why, we covered how. You're giving away a great gift for folks to be able to learn more about what it is you do and how you do it. We had some great story about cigars, and you convinced me that I do need to make the trek to Cigar International.
Well, make sure you call me.
I will, because I think we're going to be friends. And bourbon. Can't go wrong with bourbon. So again, appreciate it. Thank you very much. All the info will be in the show notes. So thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Walter, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Sales and Cigars with Walter Crosby of Helix Sales Development. For more on sales and cigars, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sales and Cigars, produced by thepodcastproshop.com.